We're building America back better. Joe Biden signed the infrastructure deal last week. Now it's time to protect Americans' families. So what's in it? The social safety net. We're going to talk about what's in the $2 trillion tax and spending proposal. It's Save the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville, and we'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back. This is Save the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville. We want to welcome you and thank you for joining us on this week of Thanksgiving. That's right. It is the week of Thanksgiving. I can't believe that we've made it this far here in the year of 2021. It's been quite an adventure. But we actually are here and we're thankful for all the great things in our lives here at the Norfolk State University, at WNSB, Hot 91, the soul of VA. I've got my producer here, Marvin Folks, also known as DJ Scandalous. You can listen to him here every week, every day, Monday through Friday, from 2 to 6 p.m., a long-time DJ here in the area and well-known, phenomenal producer. Also, I'd like to thank all of the supporters of Save the Water. And not just Save the Water, but I like to thank all of the stakeholders, alumni, students, faculty, administrators, and friends of the Norfolk State University. Because without you, we couldn't do what we do here. So I don't know about you, but I'm just in a real good mood, Marvin, of Thanksgiving. I'm just really thankful for all that God has blessed us with. When we think about COVID-19, we think about, everything that could have happened that was bad, right? Unfortunately, some of my friends, some of our families actually experienced a lot of bad things during that time period. But God saw fit to spare us and prosper us and be productive and be in peace. So it's really an opportunity and a time just today, but not just today, on this Sunday, the week of Thanksgiving, or the day of Thanksgiving, or even the day after Thanksgiving. It's not just a time then, but it's a time, I think, for the rest of the year, and should be every day, just to say thanks. Thanks for our friends, our good coworkers. Thanks to all those individuals that really help us to make us who we are. I don't know about you, but I'm also ready for some good Thanksgiving food, right? So we hope that you out there that are listening to us here are ready for your Thanksgiving break and take a break, sit back, enjoy family, friends, reflect upon all those things that are good in your life, because guess what? It could be worse. It could be worse. So here in the month of November, we're going through our What's In It series. In our What's In It series, we're peeling back the covers and peeling that onion to really dive deep into what's really going on in our country and in our community. So last week, our first installment of Build Back Better America, we talked about the infrastructure bill. The infrastructure bill, we're talking over $1.2 trillion that was signed into law, all right? That's going to trickle down to our states, trickle down to our cities and local communities. With that being the case, that is a major, absolutely major bill, life-changing bill, generational changing bill to improve our roads, our highways, our broadband infrastructure system, which a lot of people don't think infrastructure is about that. But as I talked about last week, what COVID-19 did, everybody was at home going through Zoom University or K through 12 Zoom, right? So we know that we need broadband. We need more connectivity in our low-income areas that have been historically ignored, our rural areas, and the like, just reliability of it. Not only that, but our railways and clean energy, so that our environment, our country, our world, our waters, the air that we breathe, that we leave it to our generation that's coming behind us a little bit better. And ultimately, Marvin, I mean, would you agree? I mean, that's really what we want to do in life. That's what's the most important. That's right. To leave things back a little better than we found it. Now, we're taking a look, now that we've signed the infrastructure bill, and that's happening. We're now going to take a look at the social safety net. And originally, this particular bill was $3.5 trillion that was really crafted and spearheaded by what's called the progressives of our government. These are individuals like Bernie Sanders and those individuals known as the Squad, okay, with AOC being the most recognizable one. But these individuals helped to spearhead what's called a social safety net. And really what it is not just bolstering our infrastructure, but building our infrastructure or people. Many times, you know, you have bills, you have different types of prosperity, different types of the economy, different parts of the economy that benefit those at the top. But historically, those in the middle, and especially those at the bottom, are clearly left out. And that's what this bill was really actually created to do, to basically remember them and build that social safety net so that when those of us like you and I, you know, end up transitioning to older age, I would say not older age, but, you know, just mature age. There you go. Mature age that we're taking care of. And those who are young, or those who are middle class, those who are working two jobs to make ends meet, not to get ahead, but to make ends meet. These are the individuals that this bill was really sought to help. But there was, that's right, as in any negotiation, you're going to have different sides and different factions. So not only did you have internal fighting, but you also had external, cross-aisle fighting. And what we're going to do here, we're going to take a look at, first of all, the bill itself. We're going to take a look at what the White House is championing, what they're talking about, and kind of look and see what's in there from their perspective. Then we'll discuss how this bill actually came about and where we are right now. And then we'll also delve into, in the second half hour, we'll delve into what's actually in the bill. We'll peel it back, right? Look at how many dollars are dedicated to this program, how many dollars are dedicated to this, how many years, what are the measurables, what is it going to improve? Because ultimately, that's the important part, okay? We can throw money at an issue, but if it's not solving the problem or getting the deliverables that we want, I mean, is it really a very a good bill? Some people say, keep throwing more money at it. I know those at the top want more money. All of us want more. But again, we're talking about ensuring that our dollars are well spent, well invested. And Marvin, I talk a lot about my father. And my father gave me a lot of wisdom, not just in his sayings, but also in his lifestyle, his life that he lived. And in his right age of 80 years old, almost 81, I had a chance to see him recently. I remember one thing that he told me. He said, son, the greatest investment you can make, it's not in stocks, it's not in your career. He said, the greatest investment you can make is in people. I said, and I thought about that for a second. Why is the greatest investment in people? Because it's the only investment that knows no limit of return. When you sow a seed in someone, you never know how you're affecting people. You never know how far that seed is going to grow. You never know, once that seed matures, the offspring of that for not just one growth season, but multiple growth seasons. And that stuck with me. And I remembered that when I started reading about this bill, about the framework of it. how many times have our legislators said, hey, let's forget our interests or the interests of special interests. And I'm not going to say our interests. I'll say special interests, right? Individuals who are able to pay top dollar for individuals that can get to legislators to talk with them. He said, how many have said, let's not consider their interests. Let's consider the interests of those that voted for us that really can't afford to even drive up to the Capitol or take a day off. That can't afford, don't really know how to get here, don't know how to navigate the layers. And that's what this bill does. It says we're going to invest in people because, according to my father, that's the only investment that knows no limit on its return. So let's get into it. From whitehouse.gov, this is from the White House website. It talks about President Biden announces the Build Back Better framework. And in this, it says that he believes that there's no greater economic engine in the world than the hard work and ingenuity of American people. He talked about how the economy has worked great for those at the top, while working families continually get squeezed. So what he's promised to do is rebuild the backbone of the country, the middle class, so that everybody comes along this time. So he says he's delivering on his promises. Now, when he mentioned the middle class, when he mentioned the backbone of society, those are the individuals that you think about that drive the trucks, not own the trucks or the trucking company, but they drive the 18-wheelers to get our goods and services to us. Right now, we've got freights upon freights out in the oceans and ports that can't even get here. So when we talk about the supply chain, the question is, what's happening? The backbone of America needs help. When we think about how our roads and bridges are built, yeah, we have equipment, we have architecture, we have engineers, but those individuals that actually have to put the concrete in place, they have to weld the bars in place. That's the backbone of America. When we talk about the classroom and our greatest asset, which is our children. So I always like to say that our greatest asset are our children because they're our future. So ensuring that our teachers, K through 12 teachers, and even before K through 12, because we're going to talk about universal pre-K in a moment, how they are the backbone of America. And we can't forget about, because a lot of our people worked tirelessly and did the jobs of domestics, did the jobs of custodians, did the jobs of those in the kitchen, and still to this day. But that's the backbone of America as well. And that's what this bill is here to do, to help out these individuals. So on its face, it's good social policy. But let's delve into it and see what's happening. So according to the White House, they believe that this is the most transformative investment in children and caregiving in generations. Because what's going to happen is they're going to create 2 years of free preschool for every 3 and 4-year-old in America. 35 million families will receive a major tax cut by extending the child tax credit also, and expand access to high-quality care for older people with disabilities. When you talk about universal free pre-K for 3 and 4-year-olds, that's game-changing. Because we know that when you go to school, prepare for kindergarten, when you have just 1 year before you go to kindergarten, your level of comprehension are years ahead of those that did not. We know that even though we may look at and say children don't understand, they do. That's right, Marvin. They're soaking things up, right? As a matter of fact, it's easier to learn a different language when you're young because your mind is processing that. So therefore, you could have a kid that's born here in the city of Norfolk. You could take them to the Netherlands, and they grow around people speaking Dutch. They're going to speak Dutch, even though they're from the city of Norfolk. And all their parents and all their siblings speak English. It's just the way the kid's brain works. So this is a major investment and a game changer in our greatest asset. Also, he mentions the largest effort to combat climate change in American history, the biggest expansion of affordable health care coverage in a decade. Now, this is done by reducing more than 9 million Americans by extending the premium tax credit to deliver health care coverage to up to 4 million uninsured people. So we're going to delve into that a little bit more, but I just want to give you the framework. All right, we're going to delve into the dollars and where it goes in just a moment in the second half hour. Also, it talks about the most significant effort to bring down costs and strengthen the middle class and generations through various tax credits. And they said it'll be fully paid for and reduce the deficit. Now, we got to take a look and see that. But under this agreement, no one earning less than $400,000 per year will pay a penny more in taxes. Think about that. So basically, when we talk about tax and spending, the way that we pay for programs, we can either borrow the money, we can raise the money, or we can make cuts and redirect the money. Those are three ways you can pay for something from the government standpoint. So instead of cutting programs and diverting that money or cutting services, instead of borrowing the money, creating more of a deficit by creating more debt, we're going to tax to raise the revenue. But who do we tax? Again, only if you are making over $400,000 a year. How many people out there making over $400,000 a year listening to my voice here? 1%, 2%, top 3% of the country, right? But there's also a plan earlier, and we'll talk about that later, where we talked about it was actually proposed to tax those individuals making, I want to say, over $100 million a year, something like that. And that, and that only affected less than 1,000 people in the country. Yeah, less than 1,000 people in the country. So again, this is a way, once again, to ensure that it's paid for by not burdening the future generation with more debt. So, universal free preschool, largest expansion of free education in states and communities across the country since the establishment of public high school 100 years ago. Largest investment in child care in the nation's history. So when you talk about child care is that's a game changer. Why is that a game changer? Not just money, right, Marvin? But it's also a game changer because how many of you are driving around town and you look at those signs and say, hiring on the spot, everywhere. How many see, service industries with, okay, you can make double digit an hour now, 11, 10, 12, $15 an hour, plus a sign-on bonus. I mean, that's unprecedented, right? I've never seen that. We've never seen that in the history of our country. Yeah, with minimum wage still $7.25. But what COVID did, it pushed the economy to pay people a living wage, and that's the difference. I can't live on minimum, but I can live on a living wage. Of course, if you live responsibly, like anything. But here's the deal, Marvin. So what this child care will do, it'll now provide an opportunity for people to secure appropriate child care for their children and go out and be able to work. And therefore, the economy continues to thrive. It continues to churn. So again, these are all that when we talk about investing, that's one of the major investments that we have. So let's go and take a look at this other framework. Well, further the framework as it relates to those several areas that I discussed. So also, when we talk about investing in people, we're talking about delivering affordable, high-quality care for older Americans and people with disabilities in their homes while supporting the workers who provide this care. When this is something I think I've seen it a lot. I think, and some of you out there that are listening to me, you've seen it. When you get older, you like your familiar surroundings. It may not be the best, but it's familiar to you, which means it helps you, which means it's a way for you to connect in your golden years, your final days. And you've seen a lot of people that leave that and they go to what's considered a better environment, but they deteriorate much faster. So by keeping people in their homes, see, this bill is about providing health care in your homes with individuals with disabilities and supporting home health care workers. Now, we call it, you can call them sitters, you can call them CNAs, but supporting them, that is major. Because what this is going to do, this is going to allow people with disabilities, older individuals, citizens of our country, to really be comfortable and really have their dignity while being taken care of. Once again, a major game changer. Also, provide more than 35 million households up to $3,600, $300 a month in tax cuts by expanding the American Rescue Plan's expanded child tax credit. Once again, this is a game changer because for those of you during COVID that were able to receive various deposits into your account from the IRS because of the child tax credit, I mean, you're there, children need, more food, price of food is going up, they need clothing for going back to school, electricity bills going up, that helps tremendously. You didn't have to go out and get another job for it, you didn't have to go out and also cut something here or there that's needed, or as we say, or as the saying goes, rob Peter to pay Paul, right? So you didn't have to do that, but the child tax credit will help to do that. Once again, Marvin, a major game changer when we talk about investing in people. But absolutely. But look, this is not a hand out, but it's rather a hand up to give individuals the services. Because we're talking about giving individuals services now, okay? You're not going to get a check for pre-K. Pre-K is going to be taken care of, right? The home health care workers will be taken care of, okay? Right, to make sure it goes where it's allocated. You're exactly right. So again, these policies give a hand up, not a hand out. Going back, delving in a little deeper into the framework when we talk about climate change. Now, for those of you that are still doubting climate change, I think that argument's over. We've seen probably some of the most impactful, consequential climate change with weather patterns this year, to the numerous wildfires, to the rising sea level. I mean, we have countries now that say, hey, we're not going to be here in 15 years. Right. There's no snow on the snow caps, but we got snow in southern states, like literally shutting down cities because they are not used to that. Yeah, things are a little different. So helping to combat climate change is actually a major shift by doing this as we shift to clean energy and electric. So we're talking about ensuring clean energy technology, wind turbine blades, solar panels to electric cars, all built here in America, with American-made steel and materials. That's huge. Game changer. Also, advance environmental justice through clean energy and sustainability that will invest in projects around the country. Now, when we talk about environmental justice, I want to talk about this just a little bit because ultimately, the disadvantaged communities don't really receive the advantages of our industries. Many times, we have environmental injustice around our communities. Pollution, lack of appropriate services, bad roads, absolutely. So what this does, delivering 40% of benefits of investments of disadvantaged communities President Biden is implementing what's called Justice 40 Initiative. Justice 40 Initiative. What is the Justice 40 Initiative? It's a framework that's going to fund port electrification, facilitate the deployment of cleaner transit buses, trucks, support critical community capacity building, grants to environmental justice communities. Also, it's going to create a new civilian climate corps with over 300,000 members that look like America. So what is this corps? Diverse new workforce will conserve our public lands, bolster community resilience, address the changing climate, all while putting good-paying union jobs within reach of Americans. Game changer. Absolute game changer. Justice 40 is more than just a word. It's more than just a phrase, Marvin. Justice 40 means real change. It means an opportunity for real, what we call real equity. Yeah, Justice 40. Well, I'm assuming this justice, he's asking what 40 stands for. I'm assuming that this Justice 40 initiative is the amount of years that it'll take and the investment itself. But we're going to delve more into it to find out. That's a good question. But the focus that I want us to really look at here is how this changes everything. And then also resilience and natural solutions to climate through historic investment in coastal restoration, forest management, and soil conservation. When we talk about coastal restoration, we've got a lot of our waterways here. We have beautiful waterways in Hampton Roads. That's one of the phenomenal things, beautiful things about our area, about our region, the water. The water goes everywhere. And not only does it water carry, but it provides life. It also provides wonderful opportunity for relaxation, sports, but it also becomes damaged. Not just the waterways itself, but our coasts become damaged. So by restoring our coast, we restore our community. And that's good policy. Because just as the waterways provide all these life-changing opportunities, it could be devastating if it's taken away. It's part of our identity. So in Hampton Roads, this is a major game changer for us. And then once again, when we take a look at healthcare, delving deeper into the framework, we're looking at expanding the healthcare by expanding the Affordable Care Act. Now, when you talk about expanding the Affordable Care Act and by strengthening it, it wasn't that long ago where there was a fight to end the Affordable Care Act. But here comes COVID. And thank goodness for the Affordable Care Act. With COVID, thank goodness for the CARES Act during that time period. It helped to save even more lives. So when you expand these services, you're expanding it to help people, to help the greatest asset, to help the backbone of America. So that's the framework, and that's from the White House. But in the second half hour, we're going to take a look at how this bill actually got here, and we're going to delve a little bit into the cost and exactly how much money is going to be dedicated to these areas of the framework. Because once again, it's just not about the money, but it's about how the deliverables are going to be provided. This is Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville. We'll be right back in just a moment in our second half hour. Welcome back. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville. Once again, we want to thank you for joining us here on Hot 91, the new sound, the soul of VA, on this Thanksgiving week. That's right. This is the start of Thanksgiving. And again, as I mentioned in the beginning of the show, I'm just so thankful to God for all of his blessings, his kindness, his grace, his mercy, especially during COVID. I mean, a once-in-a-generation global pandemic. Many individuals were affected. Some lost their lives. Some lost material things. But ultimately, he spared a lot of us and prospered a lot of us. So it's my prayer that you would be not just in good health, but also be in good peace and prosper. Because peace of mind, let me tell you, money can't buy it. So you've joined us as we're going into and continuing, actually, our What's in It series. And this week, we're talking about what's in the Build Back Better America social safety net package, right? Last week, we discussed how the infrastructure bill, and we're naming all of this Build America Back Better, because whether it's roads and infrastructure, whether it's a social safety net to help invest in our greatest asset, our people, the backbone of America, middle class, our children, cybersecurity, we're building America back better. We're building it back, and it's going to be better. So the infrastructure deal is signed, $1.2 trillion. Now it's time to invest in the people with social safety net. With the social safety net, we looked at in the first half the White House statement on it. So you go to whitehouse.gov, you can look at the statement on President Joe Biden's Build Back Better framework. Now we're going to delve into where that money is actually going, but also how this bill almost didn't make it and what's next moving forward. So let's take a look at it. Now, originally this bill was going to be about $3.5 trillion, but it got trimmed down to $1.75 trillion. Well, there was a lot of infighting between the internal party and also fighting across the aisle. So what ended up happening, Marvin, is that now we have a situation where everybody's not getting what they want, but they're getting some of what they want. But before I get into how this bill almost did not make it, let me go into and talk about, where the money is coming from, where the money is actually being allocated. So when we talked about, and we're also going to take a look at some provisions that were left out of this. So it was $3.5 trillion. Now it's down to $1.75 trillion. Now keep in mind, this is a proposed bill. We're not sure it's going to pass yet, but we're going to find out in what's next. All right. So when we talk about combating climate change, remember I mentioned earlier from the framework of the White House of this bill, we started to take a look at how much our environment, our climate is being changed. How much is important, how important it is for our climate, for us to leave our environment to our next generation unharmed, or at least a little better. So with that, in combating climate change, this new framework from the White House, this bill contains $555 billion for climate and clean energy investment. That's almost $500 billion right there. Well, it's over $500 billion. $555 billion for climate and clean energy investment. By the way, I'm actually, the source that I'm referring to is CBS News. You can go take a look at an article entitled "What's in the Democrats' New $1.75 Trillion Social Spending and Climate Bill." The first article that I referenced was from whitehouse.gov, the White House statement on this. And now we're looking at CBS News. So $555 billion investing in climate change, clean energy investment. So ideally, what this will do is cut greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, or 50% reduction compared to the 2005 levels. How is this done? In part, you're looking at tax credits to Americans who buy. Now, this is where it comes in to the people. If you buy new electric vehicles, you can get up to $12,500 in incentives. So that means you can go in the lot, purchase a new car, and off the top, you can get up to $12,500 off the cost. Now, of course, that's a discussion between you and the car representative, salesman representative, but the rebate is there. So what this is doing is designed to encourage the installation, encourage you to drop your vehicles, gas guzzling vehicles, but also it's designed to encourage the installation of solar panels on American homes as well. Now, we'll get to one of the objections of this bill, because keep in mind, we're going to look at how this infighting started, and then we're going to look at what was left in and what was kicked out. Senator Joe Manchin, who is a Democrat out of West Virginia, And in my opinion, he's probably the most influential Democrat right now, or legislator on the Hill, because no legislation passes unless he's on board. If he says thumbs up, it's a go. If he says thumbs down, more than likely it's not. So he objected to a $150 billion clean electricity performance program that was contained in the original proposal. Now, what this would do, it will pay utility companies that increase their renewable energy supplies by 4% and fine companies that don't hit this benchmark. So what was his argument? He argued that companies are already doing this, so there's no need to incentivize it. However, climate activists say private enterprise simply isn't moving fast enough. So what this provision would do, it would speed up the transition from fossil fuels to cleaner burning energy. Why would he object to this? Keep in mind, he is the senator from West Virginia. Our used to be part of Virginia, but our neighbor to the west. And one thing that they have there is a lot of the coal industry. So we're taking a look at why people are objecting to things. We got to delve into, well, why they're doing it and the implications on their constituencies and their state. So $555 billion incentives for new cars and incentives for solar panels. So now we can drive down the street, Marvin, we can see solar panels all over, houses up on houses up on houses. Let's take a look at another plan. Remember I mentioned child care and universal pre-K? Major game changer. What this does, it allows the average citizen to say, hey, I want to take advantage of these living wage jobs. And maybe I still want to work 2 jobs and not just have a living wage, but also have a savings and leave something to our children, right? So what this framework does, it provides $400 billion for child care and preschool programs funded for 6 years. That is huge. $400 billion for child care and preschool programs. We talked about it in the beginning of the show, how an individual, a child that's able to get to school 1 year before 5th grade, are years ahead of their peers. Before kindergarten, are years ahead of their peers before they even start. Pre-K 3 changes it so much more. So that's a phenomenal investment. Also, when we take a look at, now, real quick, remember I talked about these are not handouts, but hand-ups? So here's the provision that makes it a hand-up. It says that it limits child care costs for some families to no more than 7% of income, but parents must adhere to work requirements to qualify. So if you're not working, the kid is not in school. Well, they can be in school, but you're not going to get the credit for it. So you have to adhere to the work requirements. Again, a hand up, not a hand out. Let's take a look at the healthcare aspect. When we take a look at healthcare, we're looking at expanding Medicare expansion. We're expanding Medicare. Now, again, there was various provisions of this that were debated. But it would expand Medicare to cover hearing services, but eliminated a proposal for Medicare to include dental and vision, which was a key priority for Bernie Sanders. Once again, Joe Manchin believes that the program's solvency should be addressed before expanded. Now, I'll say this. One aspect of our health are dental and vision and hearing, right? Yes, we need all our health care, but it's something about not covering our teeth, not covering our dental service, not covering our vision that will impair you tremendously. Now, I can have a scrape or a bruise, but if I have a toothache, exactly, it's over. That excruciating pain in your nerves. So, again, I know we're looking at policy, but I want us to look at the real life application of this, being able to go to the dentist and have that taken care of and have regular cleanings, once again, is a game changer. So let's take a look at the extended child tax credit. So the Democrats, according to the CBS News, Democrats expanded the child tax credit for 2021 in the $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief plan, which again is CARES Act. And they wanted to extend it through 2025, but the updated framework extends the child tax credit for 1 year only for 2022, which, of course, again, is going to provide up to $3,600 in child tax credit. Also, children under 6 will receive $3,600, and children 6 to 18 will receive $3,600, and families receive monthly payments of $250 or $300 per child. So when we talk about the fully expanded child tax credit, it's available to individuals making up to $75,000 or married couples making up to $150,000. All right. So basically, it goes on a sliding scale. If you make over $150,000, you do not get the full tax credit. It deducts X amount of dollars per $1,000 that you make, or $10,000 that you make. But whatever the case may be, if you get to a certain point, you're not going to receive it. But again, this helps. This helps the average American citizen, period. Now, let's look at the dollars that are given to housing, healthcare, and immigration provisions. So we're talking about $150 billion to build or improve more than 1 million new affordable housing units with help and with rental help and down payment assistance. It also makes an investment in maternal health, community violence initiatives, Native communities, supply chain resilience. Now, let's talk about this game changer here. You've seen the housing market. You've seen the cost of rents go up. There are people that are living in their places that were impacted by COVID. Of course, landowners, unit owners, and there are people that are getting increase in rent automatically, right? Not only that, are they getting increase in rent, but there are people that can't afford to buy houses. So even if you're making this living wage, well, first off, if you're making minimum wage, you can't afford it. Even if you start working and making a living wage, your rent is taking out anything that you would make above that. So it really becomes one of those things, Marvin, where if I pay you $5, but I'm going to charge you, and I was taking $2 from you, but I'm going to raise the price, and you're going to work for $10, but I'm going to raise the price, and now you pay me $4. You're still really on the other side, right? It's the same thing. So what this does, this is really going to help a lot of people in our communities with not just new housing, up to code housing, safe housing, down payment, but it's also going to help with paying the cost as well. And then when we talk about investments in the community, maternal health, supply chain, community violence. Now, if you've seen the news like I've watched it, and see, like every day there is some situation where violence is the method to take care of it, the problem. And unfortunately, we're seeing it more and more and more. So by able to provide these initiatives to help curb it, it's good policy. Whatever we can do to help curb the violence in all of our communities, it affects all of us now. That's good policy, Martin. And maternal health. One thing that 2020 brought out, I'm going to keep referring to 2020. One thing it brought out the fact that low-income women, black women, are suffering from the lack of care that they need to help bring the new generation in. And that's one thing that this bill helps to address. Once again, investing in our greatest asset. In our Native communities, I talk about this all the time. We forget to talk about our Native communities because they're on reservations. They're not in eyesight of the mainstream, so we forget about them. but they're there. They are the natives of our country, and we need to do everything we can to right the wrong and also to help support them. In addition to that, for health care, this plan will lower premiums by an average of $600 per person for more than 900 million Americans who purchase insurance through the Affordable Care Act. So again, once again, a game changer. Also, is an additional $100 billion to reform the nation's immigration system, which, if included, would raise the price tag to $1.75 trillion to $1.85 trillion. So keep in mind, the price tag now is $1.75. If this additional $100 billion gets in, we're talking $1.85 trillion. But what is the value of that? Immigration system, raising our immigration, revamping our immigration system so that we can have a system that works for everyone. So let's look at what got cut from the bill. So those are the provisions. Over $500 billion for clean energy, another $400 billion for investment in our children, investing in our health care, investing in our tax credit, another $150 billion for housing, health care, and possibly immigration reform. So let's see what got cut from this. What got cut from the bill? 2 years of free community college. Come on. 2 years of free community college. Now, when we talk about impact, now we're on the college campus here, right? And when we talk about impacting all of our greatest asset, it's our student population. So when we look at this, a lot of our student population are saddled with this. It's become a bad word lately. Student loans. First of all, I don't think that, this is just me, I think that all monies provided to go to school should be grants, not loans. I don't think that interest should be applied to, or if it's a loan, it's a no interest loan. I just don't think interest should be capitalized on something that we're investing our country in for our greatest asset. But again, that's another policy discussion. Maybe it's a bill I can help write and submit to eliminate interest on all student assistance. No more student loans, but student grants for everyone, if you qualify. So now, with this initial domestic policy, and keep in mind, it was a major policy because President Biden's wife, actually Dr. Jill Biden, she's not just an educator, but she taught at the largest community college, well, one of the largest in the country, and that's in Northern Virginia Community College System. And just as a personal story, she was actually good friends with a former professor that unfortunately passed away due to cancer there. They named a speaker series after him, dealing with race issues. And I was fortunate enough to be the inaugural speaker for that particular lecture series at Northern Virginia Community College campus, whose wife and his mother were there. And the wife, it was actually the daughter of the gentleman who owned the photography studio and print studio before there was a Kinko's or you can go print something. Everyone had their church programs done at his shop in my hometown. Small world, is it? Small world. But again, I digress. I want to get back to this. That was a major initiative, and that was a game changer because they saw the difference, right? So instead, the measure increases the maximum Pell Grant from more than 5 million students to $550 and expands access to Dreamers, which is the name, again, given to millions of undocumented immigrants who come to the U.S. and the like. So not 2 years free community college, but it increases Pell Grants by more than 5 million by $550. The second provision that was cut from this social safety net, prescription drug prices, cutting those prices. This was a key provision that helped to aim to slash the drug prices But what ended up happening was Medicare is currently prohibited by law from negotiating for the best deal. So it would allow the new framework for that to be included in that provision. When you think about drug prices, we think about our senior citizens, those that toiled and worked tirelessly for us to be where we are today. Those are our mothers, our fathers, our grandfathers, grandmothers. We owe it to them. But again, it was cut from this social safety net. Now, here's a big one that was cut. And this is one that garnered a lot of discussion. This was actually one that was a campaign promise. Paid family and medical leave. So, do you realize we're the only industrialized country that does not have paid family and medical leave? So, let me explain. Under this provision, it was proposed to have 12 weeks of paid family and medical leave, but it was scaled down to 4 weeks. In the end, it was cut out entirely. You know, being able, and I was fortunate enough to be blessed by God to have two sons, and the ability of my wife to stay home with them is tremendous. Also, but the ability for the father also to be there would be just as tremendous, and the ability for those that don't have the types of careers or jobs to actually do that would also be a game changer. Because in those precious years, those precious moments you don't get back, it helps to bond. And for those of you who are out there listening and you had that experience, you know what it's like to bond with your child during those very, very, very important weeks that they're here. So I was very disappointed that provision was cut out, Marvin. Because again, we're the only industrialized country that does not have paid family and medical leave. So those are the three provisions that were cut out. We're left with the several provisions, well, under the framework, 4 pieces of framework or levels of framework that deals with clean energy, that deals with education, that deals with healthcare, and also helps to deal with the cost of housing. So the big question becomes, how is it paid for? So remember, this is called tax and spending bill, social safety net. So we're spending money. How are we going to get it? So under this proposal, a 15% minimum tax will be imposed on corporate profits that large corporations report to shareholders, according to CBS, as well as a 1% surcharge on corporate stock buybacks. Now, you say, okay, 1% surcharge, 15% minimum tax. How much is that going to garner us? These provisions would raise, guess how much revenue per year? Well, new revenue, it raises over approximately, it says $450 billion. $450 billion is not being taxed, but can come in. Also, the framework calls for a global minimum tax and new surtax on the wealthiest American income. Now, this is what I was talking about earlier. And it calls for bolstering IRS enforcement. So for those out there, make sure you pay your tax. It would also impose a 5% tax rate above those with the income over $10 million. And another 3% surtax on income over $25 million. So with this, the White House estimates that the new tax and surtax would raise the new surtax would raise an additional $230 billion from the nation's highest earners. So it's projected that the total new revenue for this proposal would become nearly $2 trillion. So if you're not making over $10 million a year, $25 million a year, or you're not a corporation, or you're where they're buying back stocks from their shareholders, you don't have to worry about it. It's not going to affect you. So what this does, it taxes the wealthiest of our America. Now, some would say we're punishing those individuals. It's not a punishment. We talk about paying fair share. It's fair share. You know, I think about the scripture. You guys know I talk about church. I grew up in church. And, you know, in scripture it says, hey, just give me 10% and a free will offering. Not 10% if you make less than $10 million or, you know, then there's a sliding scale if you make more than $10 million. I said, no, just give me 10. Give it back. I'm good. So what this does, it says, hey, let's be fair. Let's tax your fair share. I remember the late Republican nominee, Republican candidate, actually, that passed away from COVID. He had the famous 999 plan. 9% flat tax for individuals, 9% flat tax for small business, 9% flat tax for corporations, 9% across the board. Well, that didn't play too well, but it was very smart. And when you talk about a flat tax that's not just across the board, whatever it is, you could take all the guessing. You could take out all the tax provisions, and there we go. We have what we have. So when I talked about how this bill almost didn't make it, right now, even though this bill will help every single state in the United States, red state, blue state, purple state, leaning red, leaning blue, poor, wealthy, populous, high population, low population. It helps everybody. It does not have support of one single Republican. Not going to support it. And also, with the infight across the board, it almost didn't make it. We saw the provisions that were left out. So if everything stays as is, the two senators, Senator Joe Manchin out of West Virginia and Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona, and a progressive, they were brought together to agree on this. This is what we will see passed soon, hopefully before the new year. But once again, in the final comments, and we're getting ready to end the show here, time flies. What this does is good policy that protects our greatest asset, our people. So stay tuned, and we'll see how it's implemented. This is Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville, and we'll see you next week. Enjoy your Thanksgiving.